I'd like to thank Katie Rose from the University of Notre Dame. She will help present this Google Apps at Notre Dame webinar. She's a program manager for enterprise initiatives over at Notre Dame, and she will talk about how they evaluated Google Apps, how they implemented Google Apps, and eventually what were the results that they saw. I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions for Katie, so I would highly encourage you guys to go to the moderator page link that we sent in the webinar invite. Over there, you'll be able to see other questions that some of the other participants of this webinar had written as well. You can vote on those questions as well as enter your new questions. And if you have questions about Google Apps, please use the Q&A block in the bottom right of your screen. That's where you can ask questions to Cindy and me. And as the presentation is going on, we will help answer any questions about Google Apps. But like I mentioned, if you have questions about the implementation at Notre Dame, please use the moderator link that we sent out, and we're going to remind you again in the chat what that link is. By the way, this presentation is being recorded, and I know a lot of you are interested in getting this presentation in a hard copy format, and we'll be happy to email that to you guys along with the recording as well, which will be on our website. And if you have more questions after this presentation, please go to our website at www.google.com/a/edu. We will remind you what that URL is again, but that's where you can go to get more information about Google Apps. With that, let me hand it over to Katie to walk us through their implementation and the results that they saw at Notre Dame.
Hi, as they said, my name is Katie Rose. I was the lead for our Google Apps implementation here at Notre Dame. My contact information is on this first slide if you have other questions after the presentation, as well as the link to our Google information page here at Notre Dame. For those of you who don't know much about Notre Dame, we're located in South Bend, Indiana. We were founded in 1842 by a priest of the Holy Cross. And the university mission focuses on teaching and learning and research as well as service, and all of that is permeated with the Catholic character that the university was founded with. We have roughly 10,000 undergraduate students, 2,000 grad students, and approximately 5,000 faculty and staff, so a pretty decently sized campus for the Midwest. Before we moved to Google Apps, we obviously were on another system, and last spring we were experiencing a variety of different issues, the most important of which was that our students were very dissatisfied with our legacy system. They had very small email quotas, right around 100 megabytes. The webmail product that we were using ran so slowly that it could take them literally up to a minute to log into it, and it was very outdated. They didn't have an integrated calendaring system that they could use. The systems we had didn't work well with any mobile devices, and we were starting to experience severe service degradations because the system we were on was quite outdated. In addition to that, the vendor that we were using at the time decided that they wanted to end of life parts of our infrastructure in December of 2008. So we knew that we had a very tight deadline sitting in front of us that we really needed to make a change to handle. So why did we go to Google Apps? The first thing we did was we actually talked to both the students and then talked within the OIT about what we wanted in a new system. We knew that we wanted to keep everybody's addresses at nd.edu, which is the current format we've been using, because we didn't want to have to re-educate students as well as the rest of faculty and staff on campus about how to communicate with the students. We wanted to make sure that students had a lot more email storage. We wanted to be able to provide them an integrated calendar system. We knew it needed to be highly available because of the complaints we were getting every time we had a service outage. We knew we needed a much better webmail client, something that could log them in quickly as well as provide a lot more functionality than that older client did. We also wanted them to be able to use this from any platform, Windows, Mac, Linux, and we knew that with the wealth of smartphones and PDAs that students were starting to bring onto campus, that we needed really strong mobile support so that they could get to all of those services from their phones. We also wanted something that was very easy to implement because we knew we had such a tight timeline, and we didn't want to lose any of the existing features that we had. We already supplied email forwarding, auto-reply, we filtered for spam, we checked for viruses, we had some ways to handle phishing scams, so we didn't want to lose any of that. And then, of course, if there were extra things with the system, that would, of course, be a bonus. So when we looked at what we could do to decide what to go with, we heavily weighted our choice on what the students were telling us they wanted. And we knew that because they were calling the help desk saying, can't you get us on Google? And in addition to that, the student government campaigns in the spring of 2008 all decided to include as part of their platform moving student email to Google services. Whether they had the ability to do that or not, they decided that that was a mission they wanted to take on. We also had statistics from our legacy system that showed that when students chose to forward their Notre Dame mail somewhere else, and we saw a growing number of students starting to do that, they forwarded it to Google 10 times more than any other services combined. So we knew that Google was really the most popular choice for the students. In addition to that, from our perspective, the Google system made it far easier for us to maintain an @nd.edu address for everyone. They guaranteed us uptime. They support an incredibly wide array of browsers. You can still use an email program that you want to use locally on the desktop if that's what you want. You can have a variety of languages easily supported. It works on Windows, Mac, Linux, almost any mobile phone you can come up with, and any other kind of out there OS that somebody might be using. Their APIs and their open standards made it very easy for us to start getting hooked in with their system and implement it. The virus and spam and phishing protection that they provided was actually doing better via our testing than our local system was doing. And besides that, it gave email and calendar, but it also gave us Google Docs and Google Sites and a chat utility. And in addition to that, there was going to be a cost savings because the Google Apps service is offered to educational institutions at no cost, and it would actually decrease the amount of staff time we were having to spend managing email. So after we made the decision in OIT that Google was definitely the best option, hands down, we then had to go out to the rest of campus and talk to the rest of the university leadership about what we wanted to do. So we met with student affairs and the administrative leadership, the academic leadership, and general counsel. And we sat down with them and actually gave them some test accounts, walked them through using the system, and showed them just exactly what students would have at their disposal so that they could understand what we were actually telling them. And I think that was a really key point in getting their sign-off to move students to Google. When they saw it and could actually touch it and play around with it, they understood why the students were asking for it and why it was the right move for us to make. So once they signed off, we finally could tell students that we were going to be delivering exactly what they asked us for. Implementing the solution actually was one of the easiest parts of the project. Believe it or not, our contract negotiations took a little shy of 1 month to do, which here at Notre Dame is incredibly fast. We were shocked at how easy that was to accomplish. And obviously there were no costs to provide email services for faculty, staff, students, and alumni. The faculty, staff, and students didn't have to deal with any advertisements. And the one discussion point that we had throughout the contract negotiations was how security, privacy, FERPA, other types of laws would be handled, and that was all easily handled through the contract. Google was incredibly easy to work with what we needed to see in those contracts. So that really went through with a slam dunk here, and we were just all shocked. The technology integration was also easy. The single @nd.edu mail domain for everyone allows students on Google and our faculty and staff that are on an in-house service to still only use that @nd.edu address and yet get their mail in the appropriate location. We do that by hosting the MX records for Notre Dame here on campus, as well as mail routing. And then authentication is also handled here at Notre Dame using the APIs that Google's provided. When students set up their account or when they change their password, it actually synchronizes their Notre Dame password to the Google service so that they can use the same password to access everything. Our initial rollout started when the contract got signed on April 30th last year, and within 2 weeks we had provisioned over 2,000 accounts for the incoming freshman class for the fall of 2008. And they actually start using those accounts in May. Our first year of studies office started communicating with them via email right away. So we saw a huge uptake in those accounts immediately, and we also saw a decrease in the number of calls we got to our help desk about email service at Notre Dame because incoming students were already so familiar with Google services. And in addition to that, Google support pages and the other information they provided through the implementation and deployment pack made it really easy for us to get documentation set up and out to the students so that they knew how to do what they needed to do. Over the summer, typo in my presentation, over summer 2008, we communicated and marketed the service to the existing students that would return in the fall. We probably could have actually rolled out the Google service to them right about the same time we rolled it out to the incoming freshman class, but because so many students were caught up in finals right around May 15th or had already left campus, and we don't tend to have a large summer population here at Notre Dame, we opted to wait until they returned in the fall to switch them over to Google email because we wanted to make sure that we really had a chance to tell them that there was a big change coming. So we spent the summer preparing them, getting them excited about the new service, and on the night of September 3rd, we switched over 12,000 email accounts from our legacy system to Google. And essentially we did that by flipping the switch for their mail routing in our directory system. So it was almost instantaneous. They didn't lose any mail, and the students had the option to import any old mail that they had in the legacy system into Gmail using Gmail's built-in fetch utility. So we didn't even have to worry about migrating their old mail for them. We left that up to them. Most of the work involved in implementation actually went into the communication and marketing of the service. Google's deployment pack was fantastic. It gave us sample emails, sample websites, sample news articles, and advertisements that we could use, and we made use of all of them. We customized them easily for Notre Dame so that it was relevant to our particular institution, but it really gave us a great starting point. In addition to that, we partnered with the incoming student government, the student body president, and he had actually created a technology committee on his government. So when we started talking with them, they actually came up with some great ideas about how to involve students in getting things going. We had a small pilot group from the Student Government Technology Committee that got into the service early and started thinking about what they could tell their own committee members as well as the rest of the student body about the service. And they started sending out their own emails and advertisements about Google Apps coming to Notre Dame. And overall, the communication and marketing plan was really successful because 97% of our students knew what was going to come and didn't have any problems when we made the change. We know that 3% did because they called our help desk. And as soon as we reminded them, hey, your email switched tonight, they went, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So we actually had a really, really easy time making that switch. Our marketing campaign was actually quite involved. We started at the beginning of May, shortly after the contract was signed, by letting students know that we were going to be switching them to Google Apps. We sent an email. We updated our campus portal mail channel to include an advertisement and news about the change. And we also had an article in the student newspaper right before it ended publication for the year. In June, we sent them another email update, and we posted a feature article on our website. And then in July, we sent them another email update to make sure that they were staying abreast of what was happening throughout the summer. And then in August, as they were starting to return and coming back to campus, we sent multiple emails. We had posters and banners all over campus. We had another Observer article in the student newspaper. We had ads there, and then we had yet another website article and posted additional information on the website as well. In September, the night we switched over, obviously we really hounded them with a lot of emails. We also had table tents, which kind of little papers that get stuck on the tables in the dining halls and in the student center. We had additional posters and banners and ads in the student newspaper. And we also started marketing an upcoming Google Apps bus visit for campus. So this really started to grab the students' attention. They couldn't get away from it no matter where they were. We made sure they were seeing something Google. And then the student organizations, as they started to get going in early September, also started using Google Apps for their email and calendars, which further advertised the service for students' personal use. In October, the Google Apps bus visit made a stop here at Notre Dame, which also helped bring a lot of notice to the service. And students were able to stop by the bus, learn some more about the applications other than Gmail, and kind of get to know Google a little better. And it actually resulted in quite a bit more students starting to use the calendar and docs and sites. So we were happy to have the Google bus stop by, and we hope they'll come back again. So after rollout, it was actually a huge success, and we know this for two big reasons. It increased student satisfaction, and it decreased our calls to the help desk. And it actually did that by quite a lot. Student satisfaction increased by 36%. Annually here at Notre Dame, we do a satisfaction survey of the entire campus, and we obviously break it out by primary affiliation. And we ask them about specific services. And so one of the key services we always ask about is email. And we saw a huge jump in the satisfaction for email service at Notre Dame compared to the legacy system and then moving to Google Apps. The support calls in the help desk as well decreased. We obviously keep ongoing stats about the number of calls to the help desk and what we're getting calls about. And that really, it pleased our help desk a lot. It made their job a lot easier not having to answer a lot of questions about email. Other benefits that we found after we moved to Google, we had a really improved relationship with the students on campus. They really viewed us as more of a partner, and I think a lot of that was due to the time we spent working with student government and making sure that it was seen as a joint effort between what they were voicing from student needs and what we needed to do technology-wise. The students really felt like that we had heard them and that we were actively working to give them a service that met their needs better. We also obviously can take advantage of Google's increased pace for innovation. This has been really great. It's amazing to me how many new features and applications they're able to roll out so quickly, and the service continues to evolve to better meet the needs of the students as their needs continue to grow. We avoided spending $1.5 million by switching to Google. Obviously, since our legacy architecture was being de-supported by the vendor, we needed to move faculty and staff as well. We chose to move faculty and staff to a different in-house service because our university leadership and our general counsel were a little nervous about moving faculty and staff who deal with more university-sensitive data to an outsourced system. They weren't as familiar with cloud computing. They wanted to essentially try this with students first and see where it went before they decided that it was okay for faculty and staff to move to that service. That $1.5 million cost that we avoided would have been spent on additional hardware licensing and especially storage if we had moved them to the in-house service that we moved faculty and staff to. Though the storage costs alone, we can't even compare to Google. They're offering a 7 gigabyte quota. We could have spent the entire budget for our department trying to match that for students. So that was a huge win for us. In addition to that, it freed up a lot of staff time so that our staff could work on the in-house faculty staff service that we were moving to, as well as an identity management project and some security-related projects here on campus that we really needed strong resources for. So some lessons learned. The biggest lesson that I could share with all of you is that customer buy-in is really crucial. You need to know what it is that your students want and why they want it. And if you can get them to buy into what you're wanting to give them, if you can show them how it's going to meet their needs, they will love you, and it will go a long way to making the project a success. Marketing and communication makes a big difference. If we had not spent the time and effort continually making sure that students, as well as faculty and staff, were aware of what was going on, the project would have fallen flat on its face, and it really was a huge success. We demonstrated those tools to the university leadership, to faculty who were asking about it, to staff that were wondering how they would work with students, and that made a really big difference in making sure they felt comfortable with this change and that they would still be able to work with students effectively, and in some cases even more effectively than they had before. Plan the migration carefully. You need to make sure that everybody, not just students, but also faculty and staff, are prepared for the change so that everyone knows what's going on. And the communication is just as important as the technology changes that you're making. And then the biggest lesson was that we really wished we had done this sooner. It was so easy, and it made the students so much happier that we really felt like this was a brain-dead simple decision for us. It would have been nice to have done it, 6 months earlier even. So looking forward, we're going to continue to market and educate the students about Google Apps and the new features that are coming online. Google's made things like Google Gears available that provides offline access to a lot of the services in Google Apps. There's push notifications for contacts and calendars. They've enabled some APIs to allow you to do cross-domain scheduling if your students are on Google and your faculty and staff are on a different service. We're looking into doing that. In addition to that, we're anxiously awaiting all the new apps and improvements that Google continues to release because the product just keeps getting better. Working with the faculty to grow the use of Google Apps in the classroom is actually probably one of the things that we're working hardest at because students are so excited about the service that they really want their faculty to start using it. And one of the ways that we've been working with faculty is on the development of an e-portfolio system. Our team here at Notre Dame that works with our academic technologies partnered with the College of Engineering here to create an e-portfolio system that chemical engineering majors can use throughout their academic career at Notre Dame to develop a portfolio that they can take with them through their career as well as after they leave Notre Dame. And they did that using Google Sites, which is kind of like a web page publishing service, a wiki-like service, as well as a documentation storing service. So it uses all those functions to really bring together a suite of tools that the students can then bundle together to provide a portfolio of their work, which was really a big success, and we're looking at where else we can use that in the university. We're also developing our ongoing marketing plans. This September, we plan to email all the students with a summary of the new features and changes that Google's released over the last few months. We're going to be running some ads in the student newspaper featuring the top tips that we're getting for using Google, and we're also going to be asking students to start sharing their tips with each other via our website. We're going to have a new feature story on the OIT website that highlights Google Apps again, and we're working on implementing a lot of the news news feeds that Google's providing through their blogs or their application status dashboard into our existing website as well as our campus portal. We're going to continue to develop that relationship that we have with student government to make sure that they continue to bring to us the needs that the students are voicing, as well as we can push information to them through that venue. We're going to also be growing the partnerships with some other campus groups, such as the student activities organizations, as well as the green and sustainability groups that have developed here on campus. There's a lot of growth in that area here at Notre Dame, and Google Apps is actually a really great way to stop having to print so much information and to make sharing of information more electronic. So that meets their needs in a lot of ways. We're also going to be having a contest here with the students for them to design a Notre Dame Gmail theme, and we'll actually have the student body vote on which they would prefer, and then we'll be working with Google to roll that theme out to students. So now I will go ahead and open it up for some Q&A. I'd be happy to help answer any questions you guys might have.
Thanks, Katie. That was really very insightful, very interesting presentation. What we're going to do now is we're going to move over to the Google Moderator application. That's where a lot of our attendees have put their questions. And I'm going to read out the questions, and hopefully, Katie, you can help us address those questions. So the first question is, why only students and alumni, and not staff and administration as well?
Well, like I said, our general counsel and university leadership are not as comfortable with cloud computing, and they're unsure about how university-sensitive data would be handled. And it's not that they don't trust Google, because our contract would actually cover all of those things. It's more that they were unfamiliar with it. And so they're starting to look into rolling things out to staff and administration also, but at this point they don't plan on doing that for the entire group. What we are doing right now, though, is we are allowing faculty to request access to Google Apps as they want it, and then we will create an account for them. And we kind of provide them some guidelines to make sure that they understand, that this is hosted somewhere else, and they need to really pay attention to how they are displaying data and whether it's made public or if they're sharing it to specific people or not. Just so that they're aware, it's a new system. They are not as familiar oftentimes with the Google services as students are, so we kind of still have to spend a little time educating them about it.
Thank you, Katie. And just to mention, we have a lot of universities, including some very large universities like Boise State, St. Louis University, Columbia State University, a lot of universities that are moving everyone, including faculty and staff, over into Google Apps. Just wanted to mention that.
All right, so on to the next question. How much were you able to integrate Google Apps with other services, like automatically populating students' calendars with their course schedules, or being able to auto-complete email addresses with information from your LDAP?
Right now, we do not automatically populate student calendars with their course schedules, but we are actually looking into doing that. We've had actually several student projects from within the business office and engineering that actually started to work on a way to do that. One of the key pieces of that project, of course, would be having the student schedule in a format that could be published. And right now, our administrative system that they use for student information doesn't provide that in an easily exportable format. So that's one of the things we're looking into. The auto-completion of email addresses, Google actually released some improvements to their LDAP connectivity recently, and so we are looking into that as well. We don't currently have it available, but that is by our choice. We're also looking at integrating Google Apps into some other services. We spent the first year essentially getting comfortable with just the basic Google Apps, and now we're looking into how else we can use it and make it a more integrated experience with other systems here at Notre Dame. So, one of the things we want to do is integrate it with our student information system to, allow students to register, allow them to get their class schedules, and some other things like that, so that we can give them more of that holistic experience instead of having to look in different locations for different things.
Thank you, Katie. And here's another question, and I think you addressed this during the presentation as well, but here is again. So the question is, satisfaction increased by 36%, you say. What specifically did students love about the switch, and what were the problems that Google Apps solved? So if you can briefly address that again.
Sure. The number one thing that they really disliked about the legacy system was the webmail utility itself, and they wanted specifically Gmail in its place. So Google Apps obviously solved that number one issue. Gmail is actually my preferred email client as well. The web interface for it I think is fantastic, and our students really, really love that. In addition to that, they really liked having a much larger email quota. Going from 100 megabytes to 7 gigs is huge. They liked having an integrated calendar. They liked having the ability to use Google Docs and other things and have those all integrate into one service that they could access. And that really, I think, has been kind of the big overall win, is that they didn't get just a new email system. They got a whole suite of tools that work together.
Thank you. Cindy, you want to go with the next question?
Sure. The next question is, do you have any plans to introduce any more of Google's features, either those available via Google Apps or cloud computing? Now, I think this might be a question addressed at Google, so let me just take a stab at answering that. So Google Apps is dedicated to offering a lot more services as we get them, Google Apps ready. For example, recently we implemented video, and we're dedicated to improving the site's offering, and so we're actually going to include a lot more in the future as well. You want to add anything, Wilson?
No, that's, if you look at our history, you would see that, we started off with just Gmail and Google Doc, and, over the course of the last 2 years, we have introduced so many more features. So you can definitely expect a lot more, applications and features and services coming in Google Apps down the road. With that, let me go over to the next question, which is about, I think this is addressed to you, Katie. How did you address concerns about storing potentially sensitive / private data on servers you didn't control?
Most of that, actually all of that, I would say, was really handled through our contract process. Like I said, when we worked with Google, the things that we were most concerned about was making sure that we would stay compliant with rules like FERPA. And when we worked with them on making sure the contract addressed those things, it really handled addressing those sensitive private data issues that the university was concerned with. And it really was very simple. Google was really easy to work with, and it was not difficult. The other side of that, of course, is that you have to educate your users about where it's appropriate to have sensitive information and how to handle it correctly. And we have policies here at Notre Dame that really specify how it's appropriate to deal with sensitive private data that the university owns. And that really covers kind of the whole gamut of things, from the papers on your desk to electronic information. So making sure that your customers are educated about the appropriate use of that data and how to protect it, as well as dealing with the contract issues, really handles the whole picture there.
Thank you, Katie. And I just wanted to add that, just like you mentioned, our terms of service definitely, it talks a lot about the confidentiality and privacy of customer data. Just so that you guys know, our data centers are SAS 70 certified, and we specifically call out the FERPA laws as well in our terms of service now. So, this is a huge issue, as far as Google is concerned as well, and we are very cognizant of our responsibilities in this area. With that, let me hand the next question over to Cindy.
The next one's a good one. So the question is, did you consider Microsoft's offering in this space? If so, why did you choose not to go with them?
We did look at Microsoft Exchange Labs as one of the other options we had. We didn't choose Microsoft for a couple of reasons. One of them was that it really didn't play nice across all of the platforms, especially mobility-wise. At the time that we were looking at this, the best support that really gave you the full features for the mobile devices only worked for Windows Mobile, and we knew that we had a growing number of iPhones coming on campus as well as BlackBerries, and we needed something that was going to work across all of those. In addition, it was really focused on Internet Explorer, so that really was a downside for our Mac and Linux community that we also were seeing growing numbers in. So at the time we made that decision, Microsoft really was not going to be as fully featured a tool as we needed it to be for the entire student body.
Thank you. And the next question is interesting as well, and I think it's addressed to you. So do you ever have a legal/security need to access student email accounts? If so, are you able to do this?
In the 10 years I've worked at Notre Dame, I know of only one time when we've been asked to access a student email account for a legal or security need. Generally speaking, the only time we have had a need to look into a student account is really if it was being used to spam some other account somewhere, at which time we just spin the account password. We don't actually go in and look at the student email account. While our policy here at Notre Dame allows the university to reserve the right to do that, it's very rarely, if ever, used in my knowledge. And while we can gain access to the student account on Google if we need to, since we've moved to Google, we have not had the need to. And I'd be surprised that it would really take an awful lot for the university to direct us to do that for student email.
Thank you, Katie. And I'll also add a little bit to that. If there is a legal need to access student email accounts, you can always come to Google's customer support with the subpoena or with that legal request, and Google will be happy to help you with that. And there are multiple other options as well. Since the university, you as a university own the data, you have access to this to student email accounts in multiple ways, everything from resetting email accounts to using some of the new technology like OAuth to essentially authenticate the administrator as a student and enter into email accounts, as well as setting up mail gateways through which you can have emails passing through that system where you can monitor student email if you wanted to. So all those options are available, and Google Apps is very flexible and able to integrate with other systems to allow such kind of legal or security mechanism to be able to monitor student emails.
Great. So the next question is, what did Notre Dame do to account for
their mail continued to work through the whole thing that are out there, and most of the other mail interfaces that faculty or staff would use on campus were totally unaffected. One of those we're working on, like identity management, like some of the academic projects that we have underway, as well as the implementing the other service for faculty and staff.
Sounds good.
Great. Next question online is, have you talked about or plan to implement any of the Google services into the administrative offices on campus? For example, admissions office and use for making appointments of prospective students.
Right now, although the faculty and staff and the students are on different calendaring systems, meeting invitations can be sent between the two because Google complies with iCal calendaring standards. So the admissions office can actually send an appointment meeting to a student, and they can accept or decline in Google, and the response goes back to the administrative staff here, as well as vice versa. Students can invite a faculty or staff member to a meeting, and that person can accept and decline, and the student will see the response as well. So in that respect, they are already working together. We are continuing to talk with university leadership about providing Google accounts to faculty and staff on a larger scale, especially for departmental usage, and we are starting to do that slowly. You know, for instance, the law school here has a Google account, and they use that to publish calendars about events for all of the different areas of the law school, and then students can subscribe to those events, those event calendars. So that's definitely one area that we're looking to grow, but there is already some usage that just works out of the box, whether they're on Google or not.
Thank you. And the other question, I think this is already addressed. It has to do with the annual savings for the institution, and they mentioned including hardware, software, personnel, etc. So I think you've already mentioned, you know, the 1.5 million number.
Right. You know, it's amazing to me actually how simple this was to implement, and how little time our email administrators and our directory middleware people really have to spend on managing this service. Google's done a fantastic job, and we just make sure that the accounts get provisioned appropriately, and that's really all we have to take care of in that sense. So it really cut back a lot of time that we were spending investigating issues for students about what was going on with our legacy mail service. In terms of hardware and software costs, obviously we don't buy hardware for our mail service every year, but the initial $1.5 million to implement the new system we implemented for faculty and staff made a huge difference. And I don't know that we've ever pulled together the annual savings for software costs, because obviously you renew licenses every year. But Google is currently offering this service at no cost, so no matter what you do here, you're going to be saving some money.
All right, so next question on here is, do you still offer alternative email access, or do you offer the service as an opt-in, providing an alternative for those who wish not to use Google Apps?
We currently only offer email service to students through Google. They have the option to forward their mail using Google's utility to another email address if they so choose. The university's stance is that your Notre Dame email address is one of the official communication mechanisms, so they are required to check their Notre Dame mail in some way, shape, or form. But they aren't allowed to really opt out of the service in the first place, and we've had only one student who did not want to use Google, and we ended up talking to him a little further and got him to use it. So everybody else was really happy to switch over.
Great.
And so the next question is the POP/IMAP access active, as in any other Google Apps-based email system?
Yes, we do have POP and IMAP access turned on. That's something that can be set specifically for your domain. So you can choose to only offer service through the Gmail web interface, or you can turn on POP and IMAP and allow them to use other clients. We chose to do that because that is something we've always made available to our students, and we didn't want to take away any functionality. And we still see a fair number of students using POP and IMAP clients, especially from their phones. We see that. But most of the students really seem to prefer webmail interfaces. I think that because that's what they've been used to growing up.
So I just want to take a step back. We have a couple of questions regarding that one student who did not want to use Google. What were their concerns, and why didn't they want to use Google? We had a couple of questions in the Q&A.
They were concerned about privacy and having their email stored at a commercial service not here on campus. And when we talked with them, we explained that the university had signed a contract with Google and that Google handles this data according to the rules of that contract, and we kind of walked them through that, and that really helped convince them that their information was safe and that they weren't being treated as a second-class citizen.
Gotcha. Great. Thanks for the clarification.
And the next question is, we provide email forwarding for life so as to ensure that the person's email address continues to keep them connected to us and their colleagues' peers. Did your school offer something similar and successfully transition the service to Google?
Yes. Actually, our alumni service offers email for life, and previously they had offered just a forwarding service where you just had an email address that forwarded somewhere else. They had actually received a lot of requests from the alumni here for an actual mailbox instead of just a forwarding address. And so when we signed the contract with Google, we actually started to transition the alumni service over to Google as well. And they actually are in a separate domain from the students because it was important for our university leadership. They felt like it was important to visually distinguish between active students and alumni. And so they have an alumni.ndu.edu domain that they can continue to use for as long as they want to once they graduate. And we have instructions posted for them on how to transition between the two accounts.
Nice. Thank you. And I think we have time for just one more question.
All right. The last question is, how did this implementation change the amount of effort required to administer students' user accounts?
It actually made it much easier. There was a lot less for us to manage here at Notre Dame. We get the information from our student information system on who is an active student. We make sure that their account gets created in Google, and we do that on a daily basis. And then when they graduate and we get the information that they are no longer a student here, we make sure that we go back through and deprovision the account correctly. Instead of having to not only provision the account, but provision their mailbox and back up their mail and make sure that all of that happens, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Thank you. And with that, we'll come to the end of this Q&A. And again, Katie, I would like to thank you for your time in talking to us about your implementation, your presentation, and especially answering all these questions. I'm sure our attendees really had a good time and enjoyed this presentation.
I'm happy I could help, and feel free to email me if we had any questions that didn't get answered.
Thank you. And I also want to remind all the attendees that we are recording this webinar, so there will be a video available very soon on our website. And I want to remind you again about our website, www.google.com/a/edu. And with that, we are coming to the end of the audio portion of this webinar. Cindy and I will remain online for a few more minutes to answer the last few remaining questions in the Q&A section within the WebEx. And once we are done, you should expect to receive an email from us with the presentation and hopefully a link to the video as well for this recorded webinar. With that, I'd like to thank everyone who joined us today for this webinar. Everyone have a great day.